So in this one we're going to be doing a subscriber analysis again. Excuse me if I don't have my camera on, it died. So next video I will have it on, but in this one we'll analyze 3 subscribers, and we'll start off with this guy, although I don't know if he's genuine because someone sent his photos in my Discord, but I have no way of verifying whether it's really him, but nonetheless we'll still analyze him. So we're going to start with this guy, then we're going to move on to this gentleman here, and then finally we'll move on to this guy here. So if you'd like to participate in these videos, you'll find the Discord link in the description, or you can email me directly. So let's begin with this video. Let's start with this guy first. Okay, so I mapped his landmarks in my app called Harmony, which you guys can use in the description below right now. And you can see that I already went ahead and mapped his landmarks. The AI mapping isn't 100% precise right now, so you would have to move these points manually. That's a necessity, otherwise you're going to get a low score. So that's one drawback of the app right now, but keep in mind that it's only in the beta, so improvements will be made in the next month or two to that. So then I also mapped his side profile, which actually has a very good side profile. It's maybe not orthodox in terms of its appearance, but nonetheless it is a pretty good side profile. So after mapping the points, you can select your presets. I assume that he's South Asian, but we can also test Caucasian, although there aren't too many differences between the two. There's usually more differences between the other ethnicities. So anyway, we can view the report after doing so, and you can see that he scores 75%, which is a very good Harmony score, although it's not the highest that we've seen. So let's see what some of his drawbacks, or this report isn't meant to lay out your flaws, it's more so meant to give you insight on how to improve, and if you were to go to a cosmetic surgeon, what some of your deficiencies or disharmonies are with your face. So the very first thing we see is that his eyes are kind of wider set, but still within the normal ideal range, as you can see here. His facial thirds are quite unbalanced, and I think this is one of his major drawbacks. You can see that his forehead is extremely short. Actually, that's quite a characteristic trait among South Asian populations, so it doesn't deduct quite as heavily for him. Actually, there was a bug with this, so this should be a little bit lower, maybe towards the orange range. But either way, I think you can see that his lower third is about 23.5%, which is quite low. His eyes are positively upturned and harmoniously. They're not overly upturned and they're not droopy either, so there's nothing to really note there. And his mid-face region is also quite compact. He doesn't have an overly elongated or compact mid-face, so he's not really signaling any type of issues there. And in terms of his jaw, he does have a bit of a flatter jaw shape, but it's still within the normal ideal range. And we'll see his assessments in the side profile as well. And he definitely has high cheekbones, although not insanely high, but definitely high and prominent for that matter. And due to his forehead height, you can see that his face is a little bit more compact as well. I think if he had a bit of a taller forehead, it would improve his appearance, but I wouldn't really recommend him to alter that, because what is the only option to alter your forehead height? It's to like shave your hairline or get laser hair removal. So that may affect the appearance of your hairline, and it might round at the top, so it might just look a bit strange. So I think his appearance is fine. I wouldn't really alter that. His jaw width is good. It's a little bit on the wide side, but perfectly ideal within the normal range. And the same for his chin to philtrum ratio. It's not overly excessive. It's still within the green range. His neck could be a little bit wider, at least relative to his jaw. And his mouth width is good. Nothing there to note. He does have lower set eyebrows, but they're within the upper bound of the low set range. So they're not extremely low set, but you can still see that they're close to his eyes. So that's usually preferred in male faces. And he has good eye spacing as well. Overall, his eye spacing is excellent. And also his eye shape. He has a good aspect ratio, which is the width divided by the height. So this would usually be poor if you had a lax or like a sagging lower eyelid or something of that nature. So that's what these assessments kind of indicate, if there's any kind of deficiency or abnormality, but in his case there isn't. And sometimes people just tend to have rounder eye shapes in general, which usually doesn't signal any issues. And he has a good lip proportion as well. You can see that his lower lip is fuller than the upper lip, which is usually preferred. And yeah, he has an excellent harmony between his midface, which is a bit wider and more compact, and his wider jaw. So there's an excellent harmony between the two. And I think one of his most significant flaws, along with his facial thirds, is how narrow his forehead is. So you can see that the forehead width is quite narrow, but I will say that it kind of harmonizes with his forehead height. If his forehead were too broad, it wouldn't really harmonize well with his short forehead height. So overall, he has excellent front profile harmony, about 77%. We saw that the main drawback has to do with his forehead. That's it. Everything else is practically ideal. So yeah, if he got his forehead width somehow corrected, which again I wouldn't really recommend, he would probably be upwards of 85% in harmony. Now, in terms of the side profile, he has a masculinized gonal angle. You can see just how acute it is at about 112, and that kind of carries over to his front profile as well, where he has a masculine jaw. His mandible is also perfectly inclined. It doesn't indicate any downward occlusal pattern or anything of that nature. And the same with his ramus length is good. His profile is definitely on the flatter side. You can see just how flat it is, but it's still within a normal range at 176 degrees. So again, within the green range is not anything to raise any red flags about. So although his profile is a bit flatter, I wouldn't say that he has an underbite or anything of that nature. And he has a tight submental region, so that's a favorable trait. And this assessment, the nasofacial angle, indicates that he has a good harmony between his nose and his chin. So I would agree with that. Visually, he does seem to have a good nose relative to his chin. It's not overly prominent or anything like that. And he also has a good nose nasolabial angle here. He does seem to have a negative orbital vector, which just means that there's some hollowing underneath the eyes. And his eyes may be a little bit more protrusive, but it's very minor. That's not a big deal. And this assessment as well is in the green zone, indicating good harmony. So this does the same thing. It just indicates that his nose harmonizes well with his forehead and his chin. He definitely has a less projected nose. Like, it's not a big nose, I would say, but still it's within a normal range. It's not. And his nasal width to height ratio is also good. So overall, I think he has an excellent nose. It's one of his better features, or one of his best for that matter. In the H line, I would say this is ideal, or at least near ideal. His lower lip might be a little bit more protrusive, but not a big deal there. And this assessment is a variation of the nasofacial angle. So this one is a little bit higher than ideal, but still normal. So nothing too bad there. And yeah, overall, he doesn't really have many other issues. So in summary, his harmony is about 75%, and I think his main detractor is just his forehead. Everything else is pretty good. So overall, you could rate this guy about an 8, I would say, because he has his good baseline. The harmony is like your foundation, and I don't think he needs surgery, because the main flaw we discussed was the forehead, which we shouldn't really alter in his case. And other than that, he has excellent other features like skin texture. Eyebrows could be a bit darker to match with its hair color, but other than that, he doesn't really have any flaws. So he's definitely at least an 8, I would say. Okay, let's move on to the next profile. And let's do this gentleman here. Okay, so I mapped his landmarks as well. You can just quickly see that. I'll make an instruction video on how to map the landmarks, and I may link it into the about page of the website, because I think some people were having trouble. And you can also message me your account info, and I can do it for you and just save the profile. So in this guy's case, he seems to have 72% harmony, and we'll see that the harmony isn't exactly corollary with your overall attractiveness. Like, there are always other factors that go into it, but it's definitely the baseline, like your foundation. So in this guy's case, he has extremely wide set eyes. They're not extreme, but they're definitely towards the upper bound, so that is a flaw, I would say. And this guy also has disbalanced facial thirds, actually probably more so than the previous guy, because his forehead is also short and he has a taller lower third. And this should also be lower, actually. So given this, his score should actually probably be like 69% or so. So this bug was corrected, but I have yet to deploy it, so that will be corrected by the time you guys probably use it. His eyes are also upturned, which is good, and he definitely has a more compact face shape, so his mid-face is quite compact. And you take this at the middle of the interior brow, just for your information. And his jaw shape is also on the flatter side, like the previous guy, but within a normal range. And he does seem to also have higher cheekbones. You can see that they protrude or they pop out near his eyes. And the same exact thing as the previous guy, his face shape is quite compact as well. So we'll skip through a few things here. I see a lot of good assessments, so we'll skip through. His mid-face is definitely a little bit more compact, the interior, than ideal. You can see that it's quite squished. It's the only way really to describe it. But again, if you look at the improvement advice, this is quite a difficult thing to alter. I think I might need to change how the text drops down here. You can still read it, but you have to do one little cursor move at a time. So yeah, there aren't too many ways to alter this besides maybe invasive mid-face procedures. He definitely has lower set eyebrows as well. I would say that his eyes, in terms of the intercanthal distance, this distance here, they're definitely a little bit wider set than ideal, but still normal. So overall, he does seem to have some good overall facial harmony. He has quite upturned eyebrows, a little bit more than ideal, but again, within the normal range. And his lower third is distributed well, so like the upper portion compared to the overall lower third. Usually this indicates if there are any issues in terms of occlusion, because if you have an underbite, usually this lower portion can be increased in height. This overall height is called the lower anterior facial height. So if that is disharmonious, it usually indicates that you may have some kind of deep bite, which means a shorter lower portion, or a underbite, which usually elongates the chin region beyond what is preferred. So overall, I don't really see too many issues in his front profile. That's why he has 72%. Although again, the facial thirds should be a little bit lower in score. Now in terms of the side profile, he actually has a pretty good one. The gonale angle is within the normal ideal range. His brow region is masculinized and preferred. And his mandible is not overly flat either. And he does have a long ramus length, which adds volume to your jaw. One thing that this guy has that the previous guy did not have is a unideal facial convexity. Excuse me. So his face is a bit rounder than ideal. Sorry, I need to drink some water. Yeah, he definitely has a bit of a rounder facial profile. And this may indicate a bit of an overbite, where the upper portion is a bit anterior to the lower portion, so it could definitely indicate that. And we'll see other assessments whether they say the same. Now the nasofacial angle is also pretty high, outside of the normal range. So in this case, it shows that his chin is not harmonious with his nose. And imagine that the chin were more forward, like this. That would close down the angle and result in a lower angle. So in his case, I think he does have a recessed chin position slightly. Could be maybe around here. So in his case, if he wanted to improve that, he could probably There are different methods to improve it. You can get non-surgical interventions, so you can get filler at this region, but if it's a dentofacial issue and a functional issue, you maybe want to get it corrected with braces or jaw orthognathic surgery. So there are various methods to correct your face, quote unquote, but the best course of action really depends on what's causing it. And yeah, he does have a bit of a more upturned nose shape there, but perfectly normal. And the same thing applies for this facial convexity assessment. So overall, I think he does have probably about the 69% range. And if you factor in the other assessments, like maybe the mentolabial creasing, the facial angularity, the nasolabial folds here, which I will include assessments for that in the report as well, this guy may be lower towards the 6 range. I still think he's within the 6 range, but maybe a bit lower than the harmony score. Okay, the final fellow we'll analyze is this guy. Now, I've went ahead and mapped his landmarks as well, and you can see them here. And his harmony score comes out to 57%. So I'll let you know if there are any issues here in terms of bugs or inaccuracies with the numbers, but it looks pretty accurate thus far. So he actually has excellent eye spacing, perfectly within the normal ideal range. His facial thirds are actually quite balanced as well. They're pretty equal in distribution. The only thing I would note is that his middle third is a bit longer, which can be slightly feminizing, but in his case it's not excessively long, so that doesn't really feminize his face in my opinion. And his eye tilt is a little bit lower than ideal, but still he has upturned eyes for sure. Now this is one of his main detractors, is that his mid-face region is quite elongated, so he has a low facial width to height ratio. It's still normal, it's within a normal bound, but it is lower than ideal by a substantial amount. And the same with his jawline, it's quite steep, and we'll see some assessments in the side that might carry over to that. So those are 2 of his main flaws I see so far. He definitely has high cheekbones as well. And actually, people have a misconception about cheekbones, that usually high means prominent, they conflate the two. But actually, most people have high cheekbones because anatomically, the cheekbones are the zygion, the zygomatic bone, is towards the upper portion of your midface. So anatomically, most people are supposed to have high cheekbones, but they can vary in height. Like some people may have them up here, some maybe down here, but in general, they're supposed to be high. I think people conflate prominent cheekbones, like ones that look angular because of whatever, low body fat, or just prominence in general. So they conflate the two. He also has a long face shape, definitely longer than preferred. But it's within a normal range, just not as ideal as possible. He has a good jaw width, although again, it's steep, the jaw is steep, so it may look narrower, but the actual gonion, the intergonial width here, is perfectly fine. And his philtrum is also quite long compared to his chin, so normal, it's still within a normal range, but not ideal. And all of these things kind of compound. So, yeah. And the mouth width to nose width is also a bit narrow. So he could have a bit of a wider mouth or narrower nose, it depends. And he also has fairly low set eyebrows. Again, not the most low set, but comparable to the first guy. So let's move on to the side profile, because I don't see too many other things here worth mentioning. His forehead width is good, at least compared to his cheekbone width, but that's not to be conflated with the hairline recession. So he definitely has some kind of Norwooding, or it's called balding, more commonly referred to that as that. But I will try to include an assessment for this as well. There should be a way to assess this with AI. So that covers that. One final thing to mention is the medial canthal angle, or just the interior eye corner, usually is preferably sharper, because a less sharp angle can be a bit, it's not feminizing, it's more neotenous. So it makes you look a little bit more wide-eyed and youthful, I would say. But a more striking interior of your eye is more, I guess the only way the literature describes it actually is jaguar-like. So that's not my words, that's from the literature on the topic where this angle was sourced. Okay, in terms of his gonale angle, he definitely has a steeper one, so it's more obtuse, a bit more feminized and rounded. So it's normal, but not ideal, not preferred. And his brow ridge is a little bit more feminized as well. Now this is one of his major flaws, which correlates directly to his jaw frontal angle and the appearance of his jaw in the front. His mandible is very steep, so it's about 31 degrees, 30 to 31, which actually is outside of the normal range. So he definitely, I would say, I can say with 90% certainty he has some kind of occlusal or dental issue where his jaw growth pattern is a bit, the term is hypodivergent or hyperdivergent, so it's a bit more downward grown than preferred. And the same thing applies to this. Usually the ramus here, or the back portion of the jaw, it usually is longer, but since his mandible is more downward grown, then it seems that his jaw growth didn't come from this end, but rather from this end, and that is also unfavorable. And the same as the previous guy, he has a bit of a rounder profile than ideal, and similarly it probably indicates some kind of overbite. So beyond that, his nose isn't that large. It does harmonize well with his face. And the same for the total facial convexity, so that's fortunate. He doesn't have an overly large nose. This angle is also good, although most of the protrusion is coming from his lower lip, so his lips are a bit probably more protrusive than ideal. Yeah, his nose is not that prominent, which actually harmonizes with his face. So yeah, his lip assessments are not great because you can see his lower lip is quite prominent, and that usually comes along with malocclusion, and the same for this as well. So besides that, I don't really see too many other issues, and I think this score is representative of his overall rating. So I would probably place this guy around his score. I mean, you could probably deduct a few points because of the hairline and whatnot, but I would say he's in that 5.3 to 5.5 range, so above average, but not excessively above average. And if you were to correct these issues, like his dental occlusion, I could certainly see him improving to the 6 range, because that's probably his main detractor, is just the jaw. So let me know what you guys think. Feel free to use the Harmony app in the video in the description, the link. If there's anything else I need to note in the description, you'll find it there. Keep suggesting any videos you'd like to see. I'll be pumping out different types of content shortly. As soon as the other app feature launches, which is this one, you can see the idealized feature. This is going to be really cool, and I think you guys will probably use this a lot. It's just fun. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.